Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. On this short segment, I'd like to address the acknowledgement of unrighteousness and therefore rendering a righteous judgment in the midst of our enemies. We have seen the mistreatment of our people, and we've seen many of our enemies who have turned a blind eye to the mistreatment of our people. And in many instances, in the midst of ourselves, some of our people are unwilling to hand out righteous judgment in the midst of ourselves, and we're also unwilling to punish those who are going against Torah or who have done things to harm us as a group. So let me, I will certainly cover some of the things that I am seeing right now, specifically dealing with some of these cases, and kind of give you an idea of where I see us moving from here as a people and as a nation. So once again, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws, do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. We're not to deviate to the right hand or to the left hand. We must walk the straight and narrow way. Now, with our people, we have been abused for so long, some of us has gotten used to it. And we seem to not even take it into consideration that these things are happening, especially when it's not happening directly to us. We have been detached as a family, so we have not considered that once you hurt my brother across the street, across the state, across the nation, in essence, you're hurting me. It's just a matter of time before it comes to my house or my direct person. So we're not quickly to respond to things that are not directly in our neck of the woods, so to speak. But every man of Israel and every man of righteousness should understand that when there's an injustice done to an Israelite anywhere, it directly affects him and his house. And it's only a matter of time before it actually comes towards him and his house and has a direct effect. Now, we've seen lately that many of the law enforcement officers, with the Ahmaud Arbery case and a few others, these murderers have been locked up for 25 years, 20 years, life sentences for the blatant murder of our people, of our sons and our daughters, etc. Now, we must understand that what we're looking at, they're quick to put their occupation as a means of, okay, XYZ law enforcement officer was actually sentenced to 25 years or 20 years in prison for the murder of such and such. Now, let's call them what they call themselves. What we have witnessed with these many cases are Christians going to jail for murder. For as a people, we must understand it is the Christian that has been murdering us for as long as we can remember. This is one of the many things that the children of Israel do not want to come to grips with. Now, the term that we all are called in these many nations are black people. Black people have to come to grips with the fact that it's the Christians that has been murdering you and that are still murdering you. This is one of the things that you fail to realize and do not want to acknowledge. So what we have seen is those three Christians, excuse me, that murdered Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia, they were given life sentences. Now, the punishment for murder is death. But we will take this in small stages for now. These men should not have been sentenced to life sentences. These men should have been given death sentences. I've told you in years past, there will come a time in all of these nations when it will carry an offense, it will carry a penalty, it will be offensive to speak ill of the children of Israel. These days are coming. There will be a penalty and a price to pay for doing harm to black people anywhere in this earth. Those days are coming. And I'm speaking about those who have turned to the Most High's righteousness, as righteousness is brought forth and the people are taught what righteousness is and who the righteous people are. And the Most High begins to pour out his spirit upon all flesh. He's doing this right now. That is why you can see a predominantly white jury will take a murderer and actually convict him. These are not things that we have seen in times past. So now we must consider a few things as we begin to bear witness to the Most High as he lifts up himself in the midst of these nations and starts to pour out his spirit upon all flesh, and the laws of the Most High begin to be magnified. As we teach this law to the children of Israel and the nations, it's going to be extremely tough, or our goal is to ensure that it becomes extremely tough for anyone to be walking in unrighteousness, living in unrighteousness, dealing in unrighteousness to breathe. They should not have a comfortable space at all. And they will know what unrighteousness is because we're going to stand up in our lot and we're going to teach it. So I'm extremely hard on the children of Israel when I deliver my lessons. The children of Israel must understand what their errors are, and their wickedness is to be brought before their own faces, that they may consider their ways and their doings and make them good. I'm also extremely hard on the heathen, that their wickedness also may be brought before their own very faces, that they as well may consider their ways and their doings and make it good. So what we have been seeing here with the last few cases is that many of the heathen who have killed our people are getting these life sentences, which should be death sentences. And this is being handed down by predominantly white juries. So what we're seeing is a changing of heart in the midst of the heathen, to where they're actually rendering righteous judgment for unrighteous acts. And we will see more and more of this as the Most High begins to pour out his spirit upon the people of the earth, and they cry out for righteousness. For what's getting ready to happen is that the unrighteous who have been taking part in wickedness, their ways are going to be poured out upon their own heads. And so therefore there will be many of the nations who will not seek to have their end be as such as the wicked man. The wicked man's his end is his destruction. And so I know certainly at this channel there are many of the children of Israel who are here, and I am thankful for that. There are also members of the nations that are here that are trying to learn as well. And so therefore when I point out the wickedness of Israel and I point out the wickedness of the nations, when I see the righteousness of the nations as well, I will point that out. So it is a righteous thing that those juries the jury was able to see exactly what has transpired in the case of Ahmaud Arbery and others, and clearly understood that that was unrighteousness. These were unrighteous acts. It was against the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and they rendered the righteous judgment to punish these men with life imprisonment. Once again, they should have been put to death. But these days are coming. So we're beginning to see now, if we're going to see righteous judgment, as we have seen over the last few months, should this righteous judgment continue, it changes everything around us. For righteous judgment is not something that we have been accustomed to in these lands or any other land in recent memory. So therefore now we must ask ourselves, what happens if we begin to see an uprising of righteousness and righteous judgment throughout this nation and other nations? Keep in mind, righteousness has not been the staple of this nation or any other nation. These nations are nothing but fragments of the Roman Empire. It is built on wickedness, idolatry, pedophilia, bestiality and everything that's ungodly. So now we know clearly if we're going to see righteousness going forward, then what's going to happen is the old order must be destroyed. So if we're going to understand that this place is built in unrighteousness, and now we're beginning to learn what righteousness is, and we have make a decision, or anyone for that matter, within these nations, within these lands, within the earth, decides to take a hold of righteousness, then you cannot have your hands holding on to two separate things at the same time. You cannot have the right hand holding on to righteousness and the left hand holding on to unrighteousness, the things of the past. So therefore now there's a decision to be made in America and every other nation on the earth. Either A, we will let go of unrighteousness and of unrighteousness and turn to the Most High's righteousness and do that which is right in the sight of the Most High going forward. Or what we'll do, we will simply straddle the fence. We're going to be partial. We're going to do part righteousness and part unrighteousness. And there can be no such thing. So clearly, as the book of Isaiah states in chapter 2, that the Most High's law is going to go forth from Zion. And so therefore, if all the nations will have to go up to the Most High's house and ask to be taught his law, it is clear that what the nations are doing right now and what the nations have been doing is incorrect. So there's going to be an upheaval in the many nations of the earth that we have come to know. For they have operated in unrighteousness, they have operated in wickedness. And as the Most High pours out his Spirit to cause those who will seek after his name to turn to his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and take an anchor therein, he will also pour out his Spirit to where those who are destined for destruction, those who are stiff-necked and stubborn to his laws, those who were created for wickedness, that they may themselves be destroyed. So what we're looking at is the great separation and the great divide. Certainly we know things have been very difficult throughout the nations. We can see that in our grocery stores, time at work. Uh, many of the supplies that we're accustomed to getting, we can no longer get. And if we are able to get them, they're scarce and they have certainly increased dramatically in prices. So what we're saying is the difficulty being increased in the midst of the many nations. So, and it will become more so as we start having these shortages. We have not had the major shortages of the things that's absolutely necessary, such as water and food. But it is very possible that those days are to come. And when these difficulties does come upon the nations, then every man will have to call on whom he deems to be God and see if he can be delivered out of the hands of the trouble that he's in. So this is the time where we are not full scale to where we go to the stores and there's absolutely no food. We're not full scale to where the money is absolutely no good. We're not to the point to where we're not able to get some water to drink. At least not quite yet here in the West. That gives every man that seeks the Most High an opportunity to actually, while things are still good, to kind of analyze what it is he thinks he believes in and really go into the text and take what he has been taught and actually put it on the scrutiny, put it on investigation, and do his research. That way, when times does become tough, whomever you decide to call upon as your God, that he will be able to deliver you out of the mess that we have coming. Some of us are not quite in that mess right now, but some of us are. It all depends on your current circumstance. So the Most High will deliver his servants in time of strife, in time of trouble. And so therefore, if the trouble has not hit your house just yet, if the trouble has not hit your nation just yet, that is an extension of the Most High's mercy. You have been given some time for when the Most High brings his wrath upon the nations. There will be no time for you to go and study. You may not have access to a YouTube channel that actually espouses the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, that teaches you and tells you exactly which way to go. You may not have that luxury. So while that is available to you right now, it would behoove you to take the time to start to read and begin to read the Most High's Torah and to try to make sense of it and to walk in it. For there will be a time when having access to teachers and trying to learn this information will not even be possible. So take this time now while you still have the ability to consider in relative peace to study and to walk in the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and to deal righteously with people. For the righteous man's way will be returned upon his own head, and the ways of the unrighteous will be returned upon his own head. What goes around comes around. This is indeed true. So what our people must ask themselves, what the nations must ask themselves, is if we have dealt unjustly with anyone, especially dealing so with God's people, what are the ramifications for that? What are the penalties for that? And the house of Israel has to ask themselves also, if we have dealt unrighteously with Yah himself, and we have turned our backs against him, and have chosen wickedness rather than righteousness, what are the ramifications for that? Well, we should know we have been living it for as long as we can remember. However, the Most High did say that he will punish us 7 times more as we continue to rebel against his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So the punishment continues to multiply itself. And so therefore now we must stop it. As it pertains to the righteous judgment that we're seeing being handed out by the heathen, there's some of our people who may feel as though we're seeing these righteous judgments based upon the uprisings that we've seen in the street. This is partially true. We are sitting in headquarters. I've just dropped the video, the war zone. So we are in a war zone in the midst of these nations, and we're in the house. We're at the headquarters of many of these nations, and they have to sleep at night. So therefore, if there's any disturbances within headquarters, they will do their best to quell it by appeasing to those who are disgruntled. So as our youth have taken to the streets, the powers that be will do their best to quell that. So some of the sentencing that we have seen is certainly to quell the masses, that the people no longer uprise. However, as in times past, that's a tactic to pacify, and then before too long they return back onto the status quo. So that is part of it. The other part of this would be that many of the children of Israel are turning to the Most High, walking after his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. They're eating correctly. They're praying correctly. They're doing the things that's right in the sight of the Most High. They're facing Jerusalem and lifting their hands in prayer and making their supplication to be delivered out of the hands of their enemies in the midst of the nations where we dwell. And the Most High is answering that call. So that is the other side of the coin. So we're certainly going to see exactly whose words are going to stand. The Most High's, or our enemies, or the children of Israel, who have taken hold of the ways of their enemies. So this becomes a battle of attrition as we begin to fortify ourselves within the law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And many of our enemies and many of the house of Israel will fortify themselves in wickedness. For there's many of our people, many of the children of Israel, who will not let go of the way of the heathen, and would not want to see the heathen's ways destroyed. For they have become comfortable in it. Some of them has become successful in it. And one way that you will thrive in the midst of wickedness is once you partake in it. And so now there's a separation where the righteous man will stand on his lot, and will do that which is righteous, and will speak out and punish the wicked. And the wicked man will also stand in his lot. He will not do that which is righteous, and will fight against it at every turn. So this is where we see exactly who's going to win this battle between the man who is righteous and the man that is unrighteous. And we certainly know that an unrighteous man is unable to sleep. I've mentioned it in many videos in times past. There's many people who have influence and affluence, have money, etc. And you would think that they're doing well. But once you are partaking in wickedness, it mars your spirit. And there's many people who are unable to lay down in their own beds, close their own eyes, and have peace of mind by which the Most High would cause them to rest. The most underrated thing in the whole earth is a good night's sleep. You are not getting a good night's sleep when you are taking part in wickedness. The Most High will not allow you to rest. He will not allow your mind to be at ease or at peace. Remember, the law brings about peace. So you're not going to run around going against the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, partaking in all manner of wickedness, and lay down at night and get a good sleep. Your soul, your body, your mind is going to be troubled. So therefore, there's a price to pay in more ways than one when you decide to walk in error. But then again, at the same time, if you're walking in righteousness, the Most High will grant you peace. You're not as troubled as the next man. And we must understand that not because that we are walking in righteousness, for those of us who are and have taken a hold of the Most High's Torah, we are not without our own problems. However, the Most High delivers us out of our problems. But we are not at all going to go unpunished. We are just, the righteous are just the ones that have acknowledged their faults, and we're willing to accept of our punishment. That is all. So do not think for 1 second, well, you know what, if I start walking in righteousness, then I won't have any problems. You will still have your problems to deal with, for you have walked in opposition to the Most High's law in times past. But the Most High will extend his mercy unto you, and he will grant you peace. But you will still have your issues to deal with. So do not think that this is some type of magic bullet. We will not go unpunished for the things that we have done. But the Most High will extend his mercy towards us, and we will not deal with the affliction of the Israelite who refused to obey, who refused to turn back, who refused to acknowledge his faults. And that's where that separation is. And at the end of the day, those who are righteous will be magnified above the unrighteous, for the unrighteous's way is destruction. So as we sit around and we look at the difficulties of the economy, we look at the strife that's within the many nations, we see the political sphere is beginning to look really ugly in all of the nations. They're having internal conflicts. And with these internal conflicts, we see where there's always some war either brewing or some form of deception being stirred up in the midst of these nations. So as the Most High brings the famines, the floods, the fires, the snow, the deceit, and also the wars, every man is going to have to consider his ways and his doings, because it's getting worse. This is not just in America, it's getting worse everywhere else. And the wicked is losing his grip. And when he begins to lose his grip, his action is going to be to tighten up his grip. He's going to do as Pharaoh did in the days of old. And that means make brick without straw. I'm going to make things harder for you. And make no mistake about it, the current strife that you're seeing in America has everything to do with the children of Israel that's in America. For as we begin to pull out of the political system, as we begin to pull out of these churches, this whole system crumbles. Once we pull away from idolatry, because remember, idolatry is that stumbling block. And if we keep that stumbling block before our face, the Most High said clearly in Ezekiel chapter 14 that he will not be inquired of by us. In other words, don't ask him anything. If you're going to come before him talking about he is three, and you're going to come before him talking about his son died for you and any of this nonsense that no prophet ever spoke of, if you come before him with that idol before your face, he will not be inquired of by you. So the first order of business for any Israelite or any one of the nations that seek to do that which is right in the Most High, the first thing that you must do, you must let go of that which is old, that which you have known, which is idolatry. We must first remove the stumbling block from our face. And once we do that, then the Most High will allow us to see. The Most High will allow us to understand. And therefore, as we turn to his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, then and only then can we come under his protection. But that cannot be done if you have that stumbling block before your face. So we are to be aware of that. Israel, I hope you're taking care of yourselves. For those of you who have been in the channel for a while, I hope that you're healthy. And the Most High is actually shielding you from the many evils and plagues that's been brought upon the face of the earth. We have certainly seen what the COVID-19 has done to many families. Those who have either died from this thing or those who have been made extremely ill from this thing. Remember, the purpose of war is deception, and the purpose of deception is to confuse. We're hearing so many different scenarios, so many different stories, and the story changes from week to week as far as what's going on with this thing. At the end of the day, what this is the Most High bringing his plagues upon the face of the earth. Nothing more and nothing less. So continue to walk within the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, that you and your house may be afforded the Most High's protection in times of trouble. And we are certainly here, and the Most High will continue to multiply these plagues times 7 upon the children of Israel who refuse to hear. So I'm thankful to see that we have heathen people of the nations that will do that which is right in the sight of the Most High and render righteous judgment when those, regardless of their occupation, decides to murder another man, especially a man of Israel. So remember this when you see them. These, never mind their occupation. These are Christians that's been murdering our people. These are Christians that are still murdering our people. And so therefore, we must turn back to Torah. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. We're seeing an uprising of righteousness in the earth. We will see it from the house of Israel because we must first stand up and teach it, and we will also see it from those of the nations who will turn to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So we are to be mindful of that. Peace, and Yah bless.